Good morning. This is the Catholic Lady, and we're reading Great Lion of God by Taylor Caldwell. I'm trying a new camera today, so I hope it works out much better and that the sound quality is better. But in the meanwhile, we will continue where we left off. We're in beginning chapter 26, and Saul was just informed by his cousin Titus Milo, who is a Praetorian guard that was guarding over the tomb of Jesus, and he had just finished telling him about the resurrection of the Lord and what happened to the guards that were there. And so they're in the garden at his home in Tarsus, and we'll continue. Chapter 26. It was very hot in the shade of the summer portico now, and the gardens were humming with multitudes of insects, and the fountains splashed and scintillated languidly in the sun. The mast cypresses and carobs and sycamores panted in the bright heat, and the pool had turned to a vivid silver, and the waterfowl had retreated from it. The two men in the portico were not aware of their own sweat and discomfort. Their eyes held each other's. Then Saul rose and went to the edge of the portico, and seemed to be regarding the garden. He said without turning, "There is an explanation. The wine was drugged, or the food, which your men and you consumed." Milo uttered an oath in exasperation. Who would do this? Pilate? Herod? For what purpose? It was the will of Pilate and Herod that he be executed, this Jesus of Nazareth, and that he be entombed, and that he rot, and so kill the faith of his wretched followers and restore, as they say, peace to Israel. Or are you implying that in some fashion his poor disciples drugged our meat and the wine, to which they had no access? They had fled to the desert to little hidden towns, all but a very few, among whom was his mother, and as poor as they and as helpless. The soldiers and the guards were struck swooning to the ground. I had eaten and drunk as they had eaten and drunk. I was not affected. "Still," said Saul, his strong back still to his cousin, "you had delusions, hallucinations, which can only come from administered drugs. Who did this I do not know, nor do I know the reason, unless it was someone's purpose to steal the body and then so declare that he had risen. Or you were hypnotized and your men with you." Again Milo swore incredulously. "There were no drugs. I have been wounded in my campaigns and was given nepenthe and opium for the pain, and I know the sensations. I did not have them that night. I was awake as I had never been awake before, disturbed and uneasy. As for being hypnotized, who did that to me? My parents, by Jupiter. I saw no one that day but the members of their household. And how is it possible for a large number of men to be hypnotized simultaneously, in the darkness, by an unseen person? I have watched hypnotists and physicians. They gaze into the eyes of those they desire to influence. There was none there that night but the legionnaires and the guards and myself. Who hypnotized whom? Perhaps you all expected him to arise, or some preternatural event to take place, and so you dreamed or imagined. You are straining wildly, Saul. None expected him to rise. I had seen him die. Men were simple soldiers, jesting, eating, gaming, laughing, looking for the dawn. They have testified they saw nothing, and only that they fell like trees to the ground before the lightning. But I did not fall, and I saw him with these eyes. I saw him and none others." "Sorcery," said Saul. Milo groaned in his vexation. "With a word which is mysterious in itself, you dismiss the event. Men give a mystery a name and then believe it is solved. I am not hysterical. I am not a woman. I am a soldier and not a dreamer of dreams, nor do I believe easily. I have told you of the immense radiance that fell on the tomb, which almost blinded me and blinded my men. How do you explain that, you man of facile words? The moon was exceptionally bright. The moon had fallen before. Then the rising sun struck it. The sun had not yet appeared over the mountains. It was still dark. Saul turned suddenly, and his freckled face was tense with fury. What is it you believe? That this Yeshua of Nazareth, this Jesus, as you call him, is the Messiah of the Jews? This unknown carpenter from the hills of Galilee? Do you believe so that you are blasphemous? For we know that when he comes, blessed be his name, the whole world will know in a twinkling. And he will come in clouds of glory for all men to see. He will not creep from obscurity like a thief in the night, with only a miserable handful of the inconsequential to herald him. Titus Milo, you are a Roman, and you are a man of hard realism. How is it possible for you to believe that he is this Messiah? I believe he is the Messiah, said Milo. I believe the testimony of my own senses, my sight and my hearing. I was in your grandfather's house, and I saw the child restored to life. I saw the death of Jesus of Nazareth, and I saw him rise from the dead. This was not done by the artful magic of unknown deceivers, by Castor and by Pollux. If there are such deceivers, then they know the traumaturgy unknown to other men, that men of such gifts do not move slyly in the darkness when they could make their fortune. Listen to me, said Saul. I have seen Hindu magicians here in Tarsus. I have seen them toss a long rope into the air, which immediately became rigid like a pole, and very high, higher than the height of 4 men could put together. And I have seen several men swarm up that rope and disappear instantly before my eyes. I do not attempt to believe it, except that I know it is not supernatural. And did not Pharaoh's magicians perform wonders before Moses? And was he not given the magic to surpass them? This is not unknown. Milo sighed despondently. You will not believe. I do not trust always the evidence of my senses. Our senses are frail and easily deceived and distorted. There are 1,000 rational explanations for what you believe happened, and each of them is more incredible than the other, said Milo. I have brought you letters. Read them. With a face full of dark suspicion, Saul read the letter from his sister Sephora, in which she related what had occurred in her grandfather's house, as Milo had related it. He is surely the Messiah, she wrote in words of joy. We know it in our hearts and in our souls, all of our household. The house is blessed that he entered it and restored our son to us. We wept when we heard he had been condemned for inciting riots and rebellions against Rome and for blasphemy. But we remembered the prophecies. We waited in patience, and he rose from the dead, as he had raised our son from the dead. Blessed is Israel that she has known this day, and blessed are we that we lived in his years. Now with greater happiness and dearer peace we can say, Hear, O Lord, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Saul shuddered. How is it possible that his sister, gently reared like a princess in her father's house, fastidious, cosseted and loved, a daughter of a noble name, who could believe that this Galilean was the Messiah? The very thought horrified the young Pharisee and shamed him, and he feared for her soul for this blasphemy. blasphemy. His enormous pride was wounded, and it smarted with rage. For had not Sephora complained of this Yeshua a few months before? Now she adored him. There was a brief letter from Joseph of Arimathea, who had written, "Your cousin Titus Milo Platonius will tell you what he saw with his own eyes, and what he heard with his own ears. But I knew him from the beginning. I gave him the tomb in which his immortal body reposed for a brief space, and I knew it would be brief. I had seen him, but I knew it would be so. As it was prophesied, I wished to see him rise from the dead, but I'll do that sentence again. I wished to see him rise from the dead, as he had foretold, but I was given a silent message that I must not be there. I was sorrowful in my heart, but now I know that if I had been present, it would be rumored that I had stolen him away and had secreted him in my own house. Such is the infamy of the human mind and the soul's rejection of truth. I rejoice, for God has not forgotten his people and has given to us our Messiah, and the world has been removed from her place and has been absolved of her sins. For the Messiah had said, and I heard him, that he came not to destroy the law, but to fulfill it." Saul put aside the letter in gloomy silence, then stared down at where it lay on the table. He felt he hated Joseph of Arimathea for this appalling folly. He felt personally betrayed, for had he not come to love Joseph as a second father? He remembered that day on the desert, and Jochanan the Essene, whom the Greeks called John the Baptist. Was it on such that men of great houses and culture and nobility, and of education and intellect and pride, built their immortal hopes and their faith? Had these cultivated men lost their reason, their wits, that they could descend to worship and to hail vagabonds and mountebanks? Had they, unaware of it, themselves been absorbed the Greek mythologies of gods, disguising themselves as men and performing wonders and rising from the dead? Or the Egyptian myths, Adonis and Osiris? They were fantasies, as surely this Yeshua of Nazareth was a fantasy of fevered and hopeful minds. They too, Adonis and Osiris, had risen from the dead. It was an old and pretty story, but it was only a tale for children. Saul turned to Titus Milo, and the praetorian captain saw, with considerable grief, the great distaste and even dislike his cousin revealed for him, and the umbrage. "I will return at once to Jerusalem," said Saul. "I will do what I can, with what influence I own, and with what money and what knowledge, to destroy this myth of Yeshua of Nazareth. For if it is not destroyed, then must all Israel perish in heresy and blasphemy. The wrath of God must be appeased." Milo said, "Seek rather that you yourself do not provoke it, Saul of Tarshish." That's the end of chapter 26. Thank you, and please join me for chapter 27.